is it Siobo there below? I used to know how to say this a week ago. You're not supposed to say the Ukraine. You're supposed to say from Ukraine.
I'm just going to say Sigmund, and I hope that's somewhat correct.
It's Christian. Christian.
I was going to say Shizhanovsky.
It's not with the sh at the beginning. Now I fucking forgot what it was. Yeah, it's hard to pronounce.
Really hard to pronounce.
Krzyzanowski. Karuizawa.
Another Stieg. Stieg Satterbakken by Sean. Is that how you say Sean?
Andre Gide. Charles Dubois. Is that Dubois? Dubois.
By Ahmad Faris Al-Shadiak.
Sure.
Talk about mispronunciation.
I don't know how to say that. Is that Kinesis?
I don't know. Louis de Camoes? Louis de Camoes? It's all just very, very confusing.
Welcome to the 3% Podcast. This is Jack Post from Open Letter Books, and here with Tom Roberge from New Directions. And today, I think our main and only real focus is to talk about the Best Translated Book Award list, the Fiction Longlist, which was announced yesterday morning, and has been getting some traction. Like, unlike last year, the AP did their story, and it was in about 15 or 20 different places this morning.
That's good. That's good. People are paying attention. It's a good. How long has it been now? What year is this?
Oh, someone else asked me that recently, and I can't remember. I think this is the 7th. It's the 6th or the 7th.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, it's been because it started like 1 year after I was at the university. So it started in the winter of 2007.
There you go. This is year 7.
Yep. So it's kind of amazing. Before we get it, what we were planning on doing is going kind of back and forth on describing each of the books or talking a bit about them. We've read them, whatever, that kind of stuff. But before we get into that, do you have any general thoughts about the overall long list?
Well, you pointed out yesterday in the email you sent to all of us publishers, I imagine, who have books on the list and whatever, how many different publishers there were and how many countries they were from. Were they both records, those numbers?
I don't think the countries is a record. I wanted to go back and check that, but I'd have to go back and count things. But I think that it's usually right around 18 to 21, and it was 20 this year. So it may be a record, but it's not an outlier sort of record.
Okay. But the 23 different publishers?
That's crazy. Yeah, there's usually like 9 or 10. Because you guys have had like 3 or 4 books on the list before. Yeah. Archipelago will have 3 or 4 books. We've had 2 or 3 most years. And this is the first year that the only 2 presses that have more than 1 book are FSG and Archipelago.
The other thing is, am I crazy that some of these are actually foreign presses that are now distributing in the U.S.?
Exactly. Portobello is the main one. And they're doing it, I forget who they're distributed by, but they only distribute like 3 books this past year in the U.S. And then Pushkin is distributed through a consortium.
Okay.
They have a new publicist that's based in New York, actually, that I emailed yesterday. But yeah, so they're part of that growing trend, because And Other Stories is doing that too.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they're distributed by consortium now as well. So the books that they have world rights to, they have distribution here. And like I don't know about the Pushkin one, but I know that the Portobello one, I think ended up on this list, or at least it was reviewed by all of the committee because of Stephen Sparks selling it at Green Apple Books.
That's their... Okay.
Yeah, so that I think that was like, it wasn't just like, oh, we have a book that's available, you'll never find it, but technically we can participate in this competition. It was a bookseller that sold copies of that book that was excited about it, that made everyone read it.
I mean, that could be, and I hope I'm not blowing up anyone's spot here, that could be totally illegal.
Yeah, it could be, but not if they have world rights.
Okay, fair enough.
Because we distribute all of our world right books in the UK through Turnaround. Most everyone. I mean, if you have world rights, you can distribute it wherever you want. And the main difference being between who's a good example of this? There's certain presses. Let me think of. I don't even know that I should name any of them. The ones that are coming to mind, but there's certain UK presses that quote-unquote distribute here, but all they're doing is listing their books through Amazon and in the wholesalers. But then there's like the presses from the UK that have actual distributors who go out and sell them to stores, which is Consortium for the most part, and also Defoe does that for a lot of UK presses, and Northwestern used to do it for a lot of Canadian presses. But it's not illegal as long as they have the world rights. And I know that the Topo book they have the world rights because I remember we were considering that, or we've heard about it as like a potential for doing the US version.
Yeah, not to get too inside the publishing world here, but we have certain books where we at the moment have world rights, but we'd be happy to sell UK rights to a British publisher. No, they're better at distributing their books there than we are there. You know what I mean?
You guys don't have a UK distributor that works for you.
Well, we have Norton, but it's...
Because that's not the same, yeah.
They're not established in the way that Random House is in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Is in the UK. It's a totally different... It's small, It's
exactly.
It's a distribution arm of Norton here in the US. It's not its own unique publisher.
Right.
But so there's this weird moment where, do we want to push books over in the UK and encourage our distributor over there to, try to get them in bookstores, or do we sort of make them available but not push it too hard? Because if we do sell the rights to a British publisher, we don't want them getting irritated that there are now New Directions copies all over the bookstores, which would, preclude any sales going into the stores when they publish their edition.
Right. I think the bigger thing, other than the sales, I mean, if you're getting like thousands of books in there, that's one thing. If it's like 100, it's probably a different thing. But the thing I think is a bigger tipping point for a lot of those UK presses is how many reviews you get. So if the review of the New Directions one takes place in The Guardian, Independent, whatever, all those places, then they're never going to get it covered again. So
yes. Well, when we published Hawthorne and Child here, we had a hard time getting reviews because it had been reviewed in London Review of Books and TLS and places like that, and not in the US, but I feel like a lot of American reviewers think, oh, well, it was reviewed in the TLS. We don't need to. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was that. It's done,
That sucks. I got the new book of his yesterday in the mail from you guys. The Pearl.
The little Pearl?
Yeah.
The title story is really good. Really, really good.
Oh,
but the title story is great.
I thought there was only one story in there. I didn't look through it very carefully.
No, it's 3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I haven't seen the galley yet, so who knows? But
I knew it was short. Okay.
It is short. So the idea of us going back and forth on these 25 books is that I was trying to spare people hearing your voice reading plot summaries and whatnot for an hour straight. So you're welcome, dear listeners.
Well, I think it's also better because you this way we don't talk about 4 books for an hour and then just run through the rest of them.
True.
Which I was more afraid of what would happen. So this is all alphabetical, and I've got the first one, which is Horses of God by Mahi Benebine. Translated, I fucked that up. I just listened over and over again to how you pronounce his name, and I fucked it up. But whatever. Translated from the French by Lulu Norman. Mahi is from Morocco, and this is a short book. It's really good. From the 25-30 pages that I read last night. I read, interestingly enough, like out of the ones I had here, I read 30 pages from like almost all of them. So I have like a taste of all these books. But this is set in like a slum in Morocco, in Casablanca, and it's it's narrated by a ghost, essentially, or a dead child who is part of these 4 suicide bombers. And so it begins, the part that I read was mostly about how they love soccer, how he was a great goalie, how their life is pretty shitty, and like how various people die and how awful everything is. And I think it's basically setting up how they get involved with like the Islamic Brotherhood or whatever you'd call it, and end up bombing their little town. But it's an interesting book, and I think it's one of the first ones that we've had on the list from Morocco. And it has to be.
Is that true? Really?
How many Moroccan authors can you name? There's only one other one that comes to mind, and I don't think any of his books are on there.
If you like.
Sorry, I just accidentally bumped my phone, and apparently Siri recorded that entire conversation of everything I just said, and said that she can't help me understand what that was about.
Siri is useless.
But anyway, so yeah, it's an interesting book. I think this is one of the ones that like, if you're looking for, because there's a good range of stuff, like the more experimental books, the more like plot-driven books, the more whatever sort of books. This is one that I think a lot of readers that are looking for something that's plot-driven, that's very telling you about that specific area, giving you a good sense of like the emotions and the what goes on internationally to cause someone to get involved in such an act. This is kind of the perfect book for that sort of reader.
I will say, when was this book written? Do you know?
I've got it right in front of me, so I can tell you in 2 seconds. It was 2010.
Because, we published the book. I can blanking on the title right now. It's driving me crazy. But there was also Ghost featured in there, and I wonder he was from Lebanon. So,
I know which book you're talking about, and I can't think of it either.
But I wonder if this is a sort of a cultural happening over in the Middle East, and with so many people, dying unnecessarily. It's a way of addressing issues of mortality and everything in a universal way, a way that everybody will understand, in these communities, just because they're all dealing with it in some way. They're all touched by it. No one is immune to it.
Yeah, I buy that. It's also like a good narrative trick for giving you a way to reflect upon the actions of something that a character did that's no longer going to be part of the story at the end.
Right.
Giving that otherwise you could do it as like a first person straightforward present moment thing, but then the story ends and there's no chance to like not necessarily moralize, but at least like reflect upon.
Right.
But by contrast, your next book is one that I would say is not for a reader looking for.
No, God, I have not read this.
I've read this. I'm teaching in my class on Tuesday.
Okay. I have a quick procedural question here, because the way these are listed, where it has the country, semicolon, publisher.
Yeah.
It's, but I feel like I'm going to begin by saying from Romania.
Okay.
Blinding by Mircea Cărtărescu, translated from the Romanian by Sean Cotter, published by Archipelago. Now, this is, by the way, all of my descriptions that I'm going to read here are from the actual publisher's website. So this is how they're describing them. I don't know what Amazon has to say or anything like that. And where appropriate, I've thrown in some blurbs, if they make sense. Part visceral dream memoir, part fictive journey through a hallucinatory Bucharest, Mircea Cărtărescu's Blinding was one of the most widely heralded literary sensations in contemporary Romania, and a bestseller from the day of its release. Riddled with hidden passageways, mesmerizing tapestries, and whispering butterflies, Blinding takes us on a mystical trip into the protagonist's childhood, his memories of hospitalization as a teenager, the prehistory of his family, a traveling circus, secret police, zombie armies, American fighter pilots, the underground jazz scene of New Orleans, and the installation of the communist regime. The kaleidoscopic world is both eerily familiar and profoundly new. Readers of Blinding will emerge from this strange pilgrimage shaken and entirely transformed. So were you entirely shaken?
It's pretty wild, yeah. It's I don't know about transformed, but it is a book that like certain images and certain metaphors like kind of resonate and stay with you for a while, and it is creepy and weird at times. Like the butterfly thing comes up over and over again. One thing that's worth noting here is that it is part of a trilogy, and it's referred to as the left wing because it's set up like a butterfly. So this is the left wing all about his mother. And it's mostly does revolve around stories of his mother. The first section is fairly surreal, and then the second section has like a plotted area to it before it becomes more surreal. Like people always go underground into these like labyrinths, and like then it becomes like a totally different sort of book, and leaves behind like a reality. It sort of reminds me a bit of Bruno Schultz in a way at certain moments. But anyways, the middle section, the second book is supposed to be the middle of the butterfly, which is about him. And then the third one, the right wing, is about his father. And this is one of those books that you read and you're like, okay, I get this. This is interesting. There's lots of great things about it, and the writing is strange. A lot of the metaphors deal with like very specific body parts and like not body parts even, but like chemicals in the brain, things about like the physicality of stuff. And that's really cool. I think that's really interesting because it's not so like emotional and soul-like. It's much more about like the brain doing things and the brain making you being used as a metaphor. But it's one of those books I think without those other two parts, it's hard to grasp what the fuck like the whole vision is. And I really hope that they translate the other two books because it's pretty stunning. We wanted to do this book a long time ago, but we weren't able to get the rights. And you guys published a book by him a long time ago too, but I've never read it.
Yeah, a long time ago. I haven't read it either.
Nostalgia, I think it is. Yeah.
Which it was a little confusing last year when people were emailing me for copies of Nostalgia all of a sudden. I was like, did I miss something? What's going on? Found out this was being published.
So, moving on then.
Moving on.
From Israel, we have Textile by Orly Castel-Bloom, translated from the Hebrew by Dalia Bailu, and published by Feminist Press. This book, I'm going to read the description on this one, because this is the one of the few that I don't have a copy of, so I haven't been able to look at it at all. A wealthy Israeli family is at a precipice in their lives in this nuanced contemporary novel. As Amanda Gruber, the matriarch of the family, undergoes an invasive cosmetic procedure, Lirit, her rebellious daughter, takes over operations at the family's pajama factory. Her brother Dal serves in the Israeli army as a sniper, while Arad, their neglectful father, a genius scientist, travels to the United States to conduct research on flak jackets. Each family member is pulled in conflicting directions, forced to examine their contentious relationships to one another. With surprising humor, Textile details the gradual disintegration of a family strained by distance and the corrosive effects of militarism and consumerism. There we go.
All right.
I'm really interested in... She wrote Dali City, which Delkey reprinted a few years ago, which is pretty fantastic. I'm really interested in reading this. This is one that I've got to contact our Feminist Press person and get them to send me a copy. That's all I've got for now because I haven't seen it.
I'm looking for a cover. Here we go.
Oh. It's like a tag on the red background with yellow.
Polka dots. I definitely have a favorite cover here. The obvious winner.
Oh, really?
It's towards the bottom. So when we get there, I will let you know.
Okay.
There also, should we say? I think there's one that's just god awful, like the worst cover. It's unfortunate.
I'm curious as to which ones you're gonna say. Yeah. Okay. You start up next.
All right. Where are we? All right. Oh, Sleet from Sweden. Sleet by Stig Dagerman, translated from the Swedish by Stephen Hartman, published by David R. Godine. So, Dagerman was, I don't know, I wouldn't say he was as famous as, Rambo or something like that, but he did commit suicide at the age of 31, and it was kind of a big deal in Sweden at the time. So, this is their description sort of relies on this. So Stig Dagerman, 1923 to 1954, is regarded as the most talented young writer of the Swedish post-war generation. By the 40s, his fiction, plays, and journalism had catapulted him to the forefront of Swedish letters, with critics comparing him to Faulkner, Kafka, and Camus. His suicide at the age of 31 was a national tragedy. This selection, containing a number of new translations of his stories, never before published in English, is unified by the theme of the loss of innocence. Often narrated from a child's perspective, the stories give voice to childhood's tender state of receptiveness and joy tinged with longing and loneliness. And I do have a blurb here from none other than Graham Greene, who said that Dagerman wrote with a beautiful objectivity. Instead of emotive phrases, he uses choice of facts like bricks to construct an emotion. If that's true, if Graham Greene's assertion about Dagerman's style is true, I think I would probably enjoy his writing, but I have not read it.
I've read the only book of his I have. Sleep is one of the books I've been waiting to read for a while, and I'm finally going to be able to have a good reason to start it. But I read Island of the Doom not too long ago. I think I talked about it on here, but that is one of the most fucked up and strange and fantastic books I've read in a long time. Like, it is super weird, and I read a lot of weird books, but that book, the style, the way that he tells his story of these people that have shipwrecked in an island are just going to die, and there's like a weird fish in the middle of the island that eats everything, is very hallucinatory and weird and strange and amazing. So I really like that book, and I know that it's like somewhat different than some of his other books, but I'm really looking forward to reading more of him. There's another book of his, A Burnt Child, that I have that looks fantastic as well.
I don't really mean to be doing this, but I have to say this probably is a long shot to win, if only because it's a collection of stories.
Yep.
Which is unfortunate. Even, the judges for this, who tend to be, trying to react in some way against the judging of other prizes still sort of fall victim to this idea that the winner should be weighty and serious and
Yeah.
not that stories can't do that. It's just without one common theme, it sort of dissipates the force of it.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to read this as that, because I mean, stories have traditionally not done that well in this award. Although I think a few collections have made it to the finalist stage, and I could see this one. I could envision this being a finalist. But yeah, I think you're right. The story thing is tricky. It's hard. I think it's hard too to judge. And there's another one coming up soon that falls in this too. It's hard to judge certain types of writing against others. So like a big, huge novel versus a collection of 8 short stories. I think that could be. You can make an argument that that's difficult.
Yes.
But anyways, I'll go on to my next one, which is from Italy, which is The Story of a New Name by Elena Ferrante. It's translated from the Italian by L.N. Goldstein, and it's published by Europa Editions. I have never read Elena Ferrante, and I know I should. And I will now, I promise. But here's the description. The second book, following 2012's acclaimed My Brilliant Friend, featuring the 2 friends Lila and Elena. The 2 protagonists are now in their 20s. Marriage appears to have imprisoned Lila. Meanwhile, Elena continues her journey of self-discovery. The 2 young women share a complex and evolving bond that brings them close at times and drives them apart at others. Each vacillates between hurtful disregard and profound love for the other. With this complicated and meticulously portrayed friendship at the center of their emotional lives, the 2 girls mature into women, paying the sometimes cruel price that this passage exacts. Which sounds a lot like our book, Why I Killed My Best Friend. Although Why I Killed My Best Friend has got more about a little bit more about radical politics and things like that in Greece, but and maybe a better title. But yeah, it sounds interesting. Have you read her before?
Oh, I love her.
I thought so.
I love her. I read Days of Abandonment almost right when they published it way back when. And I've read everything since then, except this one. I haven't gotten around to it. I read My Brilliant Friend. I think Ferrante is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Very cool. I have some of them here. I don't have this one yet.
Has she been nominated before?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. But I forget if it was for My Brilliant Friend or something else.
Troubling Love, perhaps?
Let me see if I can find it.
Don't worry about it. But yes, everyone should read Ferrante. She is amazing. And that is a pen name. If we can add some intrigue to her as a writer, Ferrante, that is a pen name. No one, I think there's one person who works at Europa in Italy who has met her.
Right.
And that's it. No one else knows who she is, where she lives, anything.
I think maybe the Lost Daughter was.
Okay.
But anyways, yeah, I know that's a great story too.
I mean, it's pretty impressive that she has managed to keep it a secret all these years. I mean, she's a rock star in Italy, and
yep,
no one even knows what she looks like.
It's kind of wild. It's great.
Yeah, I like it. The work stands on its own.
Yep.
So I am up with your book.
Yeah.
Is this awkward? I don't know.
No. Go for it.
From the Netherlands, Tirza by Arnon Grudenberg, translated from the Dutch by Sam Garrett, published by you, Open Letter Books. So I will read this, and then you can just tell me what you have to say about it. So Jürgen Hofmeister once had it all: a beautiful wife, a nice house with a garden in an upper-class neighborhood in Amsterdam, a respectable job as an editor, 2 lovely daughters named Ibi and Tirza, and a large amount of money in a Swiss bank account. But during the preparation for Tirza's graduation party, we come to know that what he has lost. His wife has left him. Ibi is starting a bed and breakfast in France, an idea which he opposed. The director of the publishing house has fired him, and his savings have vanished in the wake of 9/11. But Hofmeister still has Tirza until she introduces him to her new boyfriend, Chukri, who bears a disturbing resemblance to Muhammad Atta. And they announce their plan to spend several months in Africa. A heartrending and masterful story of a man seeking redemption. Tirza marks a high point in Grudenberg's still developing oeuvre.
I really like this book. There's a movie version that you might like. It's not as good as the book because there's a lot of sequences in the book that are flashbacks that are very well developed in the narrative. But they can't do that in the movie, so things get condensed into a 1-minute scene that's probably a 30-minute or 30-page set piece. But one of the things that's great to try and hook you guys on this is that we didn't put this in the copy, although I use it now in like our short copy, like our 60-word copy, is that the beginning of the book is Tears is leaving, she's graduating, she's going to go to Africa, and she is never coming back. And he is going to go and try and find her. And so it becomes like, it moves from like this like family drama of sorts into something a little bit more mysterious, and ends with a very, very dark moment. So I really like that book. I like Arnon a lot. His agent, I have other things to say about, but I'm going to reserve that.
Probably wise.
Yep. Well, that bridge has been burnt, so I don't know that it makes any difference. Yes. Anyways, yeah, I think you would like that book. I sent that one to you, didn't I?
Yeah, I have a copy. I don't know. I haven't gotten around to it. I
it's
have
long.
somehow accumulated a massive stack of books that I need to read. So.
Oh, I know. All my. Hopefully, this snowstorm doesn't fuck up all my David Peace mailing. I've been waiting for that for a while now. Okay, I'm up next. I've got from Austria, Her Not All Her by Elfriede Jelinek, translated from the German by Damien Searles, and published by Sylph Editions. Now, this is one that has two interesting things about it. One is that Damien is the only translator who's on here twice. That's happened a couple times before, I think with Bill Johnson even, but with Susan Bernofsky, I believe, was on here once a couple years back. But it's still the only person this time that's done it, which is unique. Plus, this book is like 40 pages long. And it's so thin that I managed to lose it in my house somewhere. I know it's here. I just don't know where I put it down at. But have you seen these Sylph editions? You must have, because you guys did Animal Inside, the Laszlo Krasznahorkai book.
Wait, but that was
the Kaye.
That was with Kaye.
This is the same publisher.
The
Kaye series is from Sylph Editions.
Got it.
And this is one of the Kayes.
I have a copy.
Well, there you go. So the Kayes are like these beautifully bound, really well manufactured, slim books. I think they're all original. They're all original pieces that are written kind of for this or used in this series, and they generally have illustrations on opposing pages. There's a lot of interesting stuff with the text that they can do to make it more of an art object and less of just a story or whatever. The Animal Inside, the Laszlo Krasznahorkai one, is beautiful, but also the Anne Carson one that came out recently, Nay Rather, that's amazing as well. This one is, I'm just going to read it to you because I don't have it in front of me. Her Not All Her is a play about, from, and to the great Swiss writer Robert Walser by the great Austrian writer and Nobel Prize winner Elfriede Jelinek. It highlights what Jelinek calls the fundamental fragmentation of Walser's voice, revealing Walser as, quote, one of those people who, when they said I, did not mean themselves. Presented here in a prize-winning translation by Damien Searles, it shows Jelinek to be an impassioned virtuoso reader of classic European writers. The Cahiers contains an essay by the director of the Robert Walser Center, Reto Sword, and 13 paintings by British artist Thomas Newbold. And it's a beautiful book that I managed to somehow lose.
Yeah, it is a beautiful book. I haven't read it yet, but I've read a few books by her, and they've all been exhausting, and it's an assault on all of your senses.
That's a good word.
In the best sort of way. But yeah, I usually take like 2 years in between.
Yeah.
Reading books by her. So
this one's only 40 pages, but this is the other one that I was going to say is hard to compare,
which is weird.
It's a play, which is weird. It's a slim book. It's going to be one that's hard to like compare, I think.
Yeah.
With others. So, but it's really cool that it's on here, especially because the Cahiers are now being distributed somewhat in the U.S. Through Chicago, I believe, and hopefully this will help make some more people aware of this book, but also aware of their whole series, because they've done like, I want to say 24 of them now? Something like that.
Something like that. I mean, that's number 18. I think the arrangement is, and here's how it worked for us. We had done our own edition of Animal Inside, and then they took over the rights after our printing ran out.
Right, but after that, they got an arrangement through Seagull Books that all their books are being just distributed here in this normal edition.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is University of Chicago, you're right.
They're super pretty.
Yes. Up next, yet again, I mean, this had to be on here, right? I mean,
it had to be on here, and I feel like if we're going to pick any favorites, this might be one of the favorites.
Yes. Although
I don't know. Yeah, okay.
Are they going to do all 6?
They are doing all 6 because
maybe Volume 6 will win, much like how Lord of the Rings Part 3 won instead of the first.
I buy that. The 6th one is supposed to be the best one because it's the longest and it's the one that he was writing when that shooting happened, where the guy went and assassinated all those people on that island.
Oh God!
And so that's essential part of him writing about why he named his book Mein Kampf. While this is happening, he's writing this last volume about all this kind of stuff, and I think that that's supposed to be the one that's like the most resonating and whatever, like the masterpiece of the whole set. But I know Jill's doing all of them because she got the arrangement with FSG where they do the paperback and she does the hardcover, so she can afford to do it no matter what.
All right, so from Norway, as maybe hinted at there, My Struggle, Book 2 by Karl Ove Knausgaard, translated from the Norwegian by Don Bartlett. Is he doing all the translations?
I believe so.
Good God. Whew.
Yeah.
He might lose his mind at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so here's the description from Archipelago. Book 2 of the 6-volume literary masterwork, My Struggle, flows with the same raw energy and candor that ignited the series' unprecedented best-selling run in Scandinavia, a virulent controversy, and an avalanche of literary awards. Knausgaard breaks down lived experience into its elementary particles, revealing the wounds and epiphanies of a truly examined life. Walking away from everything he knows in Bergen, Karl Ove finds himself in Stockholm, where he waits for the next stretch of the road to reveal itself. He strikes up a deep friendship with another exiled Norwegian, a boxing fanatic and intellectual named Geir. He reconnects with Linda, a vibrant poet who had captivated him at a writer's workshop years earlier, and the shape of his world changes. Book 2 exposes the inner landscape of a man falling in love and the fraught joys and impossible predicaments he faces as a new father. We look on as he watches his life unfold. Love, rage, and beauty flood these pages. Knausgaard writes with an exhilarating honesty and insight about the collection of moments that make up a life. The life of someone with an irrepressible need to write, of someone for whom art and the natural world are physical needs, of someone for whom death is always standing in the corner, of someone who craves solitude and love from the depths of his being. And to reinforce what you said about this being the favorite, I'm going to read 2 blurbs from 2 very well-respected reviewers. First, if the second volume of My Struggle were just a rant about the difficulties of modern parenting, written in the style of a Nordic Thomas Bernhard, it would quickly pall. But the book sears the reader because Knausgaard is a passionate idealist and not just a tetchy complainer. He wants to create great art, and he wants to fight the conformity and homogeneity of modern bourgeois existence. That is from James Woods in The New Yorker. Yep. And then, it's a book that recognizes the banal struggle of our daily lives and yet considers it nothing less than a tragedy that these lives, filled as they are not only with boredom but with fjords and cigarettes and works by Dürer, must all end in total annihilation. From Zadie Smith, writing for the New York Review of Books.
Yep. Wow.
So, yeah, this is our favorite, I would have to say.
Yeah, I think that and the one that comes after it. The maybe I don't know that it'll win either. I know that some people that I talked to really liked Volume 1 better than Volume 2, but these aren't people that are judges. But have you read any of his books?
No, there's a copy sitting right here next to me.
Yeah,
on my bookshelf, but
I want to read Volume 1 before Volume 2, just because I'm like that. But I did read A Time for Everything, the book about angels, and it's pretty fucking amazing. Like, it's incredibly good. And after reading that,
really? Angels? Yeah. I don't know.
Oh my God, it's so fascinating. So the basic story is about it's all these like kind of frames, and like the narrative isn't just about angels, but it's basically about this telling this kind of story of this guy who is a biblical scholar who would research why every moment in which angels appeared in the Bible and like what that meant and how fucked up that was. When you just take it as angels, that's one thing, like the precious moments, angels or whatever, but that's not at all what's in the Bible. And like it goes through like the moments in which they exist, and then it'll like drift into like these long passages that are stories about like the angels were protecting the Garden of Eden. They were like flames in the skies from these angels up until the flood. And so it has a whole sequence about like Noah's flood told from like the point of view of Noah's sister, I believe, in which everyone dies and the lights go out, the angels are gone. And then there's a whole section about the angels wanting to fuck humans, because that was another part of the Bible, and about like the creation of these like half-breeds. Like it's way not about angels in the way that you think of angels. It's about like interpretation and like a different way of seeing the Bible and I'm seeing these ideas, and it's fascinating. And the ending set piece of like 15 pages is pretty. I have a particular interpretation of it that I think upset a few other people, but I think it's pretty awesome. It's really an awesome book. I didn't think it would be the same thing, angels, like whatever, but it's really good, and it's not really about angels in the way that you're thinking.
It's quite convincing. I also have a copy of that sitting right here.
Yeah, it's
because
super
my
cool.
girlfriend read it and loved it. But
it's an interesting book. So speaking of favorites, the other one that might be on here is from Hungary. Is it Seobo There Below? Seobo There Below by Laszlo Krasznahorkai, translated from the Hungarian by Otili?
Yep.
Molzit? Okay.
Yep.
Otili Molzit.
Also a pen name. Right,
exactly. Which I knew I didn't realize that it was the same person until like 2 weeks ago. So currently I'm an idiot. But anyways, this Krasznahorkai won last year for Satan Tango. This is the first time that an author that won also has a book on the long list the ensuing year. So it's the first possible repeat, which I don't know it will, but nevertheless, it's interesting that happened. So Seobo, a Japanese goddess, has a peach tree in her garden that blossoms once every 3,000 years. Its fruit brings immortality. In Seobo There Below, we see her returning again and again to mortal realms, searching for a glimpse of perfection. Beauty, in Krasznahorkai's new novel, reflects, however fleetingly, the sacred, even if we are mostly unable to bear it. Seobo shows us an ancient Buddha being restored, Perugino managing his workshop, a Japanese no-actor rehearsing, a fanatic of Baroque music lecturing a handful of old villagers, tourists intruding into the rituals of Japan's most sacred shrine, a heron hunting. Over these scenes and more, structured by the Fibonacci sequence, Seobo hovers, watching it all. Have you finished this?
No. I tried. I really tried. It was not for me.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I like more structure, and I know that sounds really obnoxious for somebody who works at New Directions, but it's just not my thing. Like, I love Satan Tango, and I loved War and War. This was not.
Did you love Melancholy of Resistance?
No, I also did not love that one.
Interesting. My students love that book. They're the section of it that I had them read. The opening.
And I will say, there are people who love Seobo. Like, I feel like it really, for the people who liked it, they really loved it.
Yeah.
So, whether or not it's a favorite, I think no, but who knows?
Because of his past, the winning last year, it would have to be like it's like Louisville in the tournament. Like they still have a shot.
I guess that's true.
I'm just gonna segue, or not segue. I'm gonna digress for 2 seconds. I don't think I've told you a story, but I think you'll really appreciate it. So reading these things can be hard, right? Especially if you're reading for the first time, it becomes a little awkward. My daughter, and mispronouncing words and whatever. So my daughter's obsessed with these books called I Survived. I haven't told you about this, have I?
No.
Okay, so these I Survived books, which are like fictionalized things about, like, I survived the San Francisco earthquake of whatever, or I survived the Twin Tower collapse, or I survived the bubonic plague of 1918, whatever it is. They're always these crazy, like, horrific events, but told through giving, like, kids a bit of the history of that through the vision of, like, a young child who will live at the end of the book, right? And she's fully aware. One of the things that's interesting is she's fully well aware. She's like, well, they're fiction, so they have to have a happy ending, but, like, that's kind of stupid. But I asked her the other day, because we were buying these for her friend for his birthday party, and I was like, which one's your favorite? And she's like, oh, the one with the Nazis. I was like, the what? And she's like, the Nazis? I was like, do you mean the Nazis? And she's like, yeah, the Nazis. I was like, what do you know about the Nazis? She's like, oh, well, they killed all the Jews. And I was like, yeah, it's not exactly, but whatever. And I was like, but who were the Nazis? It's like, oh, well, they were people run by that. They're Germans that became influenced by that Hilter. Is that Hilter? No, Hitler. It's like, oh, Hitler, not Hilter. Which I love the idea of German Hilter, like leading a bunch of people. Like, no one would follow Hilter. No one.
No, that doesn't work.
All of World War II would never have happened if his name was Hilter instead of Hitler. I swear to God. But nevertheless, she got one part right. He tried to kill all the Jews. The rest of it was pretty.
That's true. It's funny. Totally unrelated. But I was watching this documentary about this golden, I don't know, pot or something like that they found in a lake somewhere in Germany, and it looked like old Celtic, but it turned out to be made by the Nazis, and they were speculating why it was why it existed or whatever. And every time there was this one expert on jewelry or something like this, and every time he seemed like he was about to say Nazi this, Nazi that, he would say like the party, and I was just like, what? Like, this is not. You can't just do that. Like,
No. Oh my God.
it was
The
very
party.
strange that they let him get away with that.
I would think, whenever you say the party, I would think of communists before Nazis.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, but he had the first time he said it was like whatever, the nationalists.
Oh yeah.
Whatever it was, and then he kept just shortening it to the party. Presumably because like they cut up his thing, but presumably like it was a 15-minute interview he had done, so of course he was just referring back to something he said a minute ago instead of half an hour ago, which is how it appears in the documentary. Anyway, it's all getting edited out. So it's
Your turn.
Anyway, so up next, talk about mispronunciation.
I used to know how to say this a week ago.
Do you know how to say this?
I knew how to do it a week ago. Let me see if I can do it again. But say it, and then I'll try and fix it.
All right, from the Ukraine.
You're not supposed to say the Ukraine. You're supposed to say from Ukraine.
Why is it just Ukraine?
They changed because the Ukraine refers to the territory and Ukraine refers to the country. When I wrote the list of like Ukrainian books that came out recently that you could get some idea of like ongoing conflict there by reading, someone sent me a message about that.
Can I just say, as a pronunciation thing, it's a little weird to start a word with a U.
I know. I think the same thing with like Netherlands.
Right.
But
yeah.
I mean, it's not with a U, but it's the same thing. So it's the Netherlands because it seems to be referring to a place, not a country. But yeah, that's supposedly just Ukraine. But the Ukraine, I'll give it to you.
All right.
I just wanted to point out that we are aware.
All right, when we are trying, I will now say Ukraine.
Okay.
From Ukraine, Autobiography of a Corpse by, I'm just going to say Sigmund, and I hope that's somewhat correct. It's
Christian. Christian.
I was going to say Krzyzanowski.
It's not with the sh at the beginning. Our Polish grad student schooled me on it, and now I fucking forgot what it was. But it's hard to pronounce.
Really hard to pronounce. Translated from the Russian. So from the Russian language by Joanne Turnbull, published by the New York Review of Books. So the stakes are wildly high in this fantastic and blackly comic. In these fantastic and blackly comic philosophical fables, which abound in nested narratives and wild paradoxes. This new collection of 11 mind-bending and spellbinding tales includes some of his most dazzling conceits. A provincial journalist who moves to Moscow finds his existence consumed by the autobiography of his room's previous occupant, which sounds a whole lot like a movie I've seen called The Tenant. The fingers of a celebrated pianist, right hand, run away to spend a night alone in the city streets. A man's lifelong quest to bite down his own elbow. What? Bite his elbow inspires both a hugely popular circus act and a new refutation of Kant. Ordinary reality cracks open before our eyes in the pages of Autobiography of a Corpse, and the extraordinary spills out. Yes, those plot descriptions were quite bizarre.
Yep.
I got to say.
Have you read him before? His other book came out a couple years ago from them. Or they did two of them, I guess.
No.
The short stories I read, I didn't read the Letter Killers Club. I don't remember why, but I like the short stories quite a bit. I didn't that last collection I thought was pretty good. Like there are a few stories I didn't like as much, but he is very strange, very surreal. Part of that kind of like Daniel Harms, but a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
A little longer in stories, not quite so aphoristic.
That's a little. Harms wasn't quite this out there.
Harms did I mean, they're in the same grouping. But yeah, this is.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
because it's not stated in here anywhere, and I assume he's long dead because it's New York Review of Books. But when
he wrote from 1887 to 1950.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's
question. He
was born in the Ukraine, but from Polish descent, and wrote in Russian because it was that period.
It was part of Russia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, more or less.
So is that how this works? That if he lived in a place that is now an independent country, we go by that current...
I did it because it showed up elsewhere. I mean, that's really the putting people in their country thing is just for myself in the initially in the database to separate out Spanish, mainly was the first and foremost reason of like, it's one thing to say there were like 42 Spanish books published last year. It's another to say there were 2 from Spain and 40 from Argentina.
Right.
So I wanted to know that kind of information. He was born in Kiev. So wherever you want to put that, I think at the time it would have been wherever. But I would rather use, I might be able to do this too, be able to use this program that we have at the university now to map out where people were born and like how many books of theirs are translated or whatever, and do like a mapping diagram. And I think that the location is more interesting than necessarily the country. With some of these, it gets real fucked up real quick. All those Soviet countries are really hard to tell like where people are from. But because I know he was born in that specific city, I just left it as Ukraine.
I would also like to point out that people move.
They do.
Adults, this happens.
There's
Anyway,
there's some that I just don't even know which country to put because they like were born in one place but spent most of their life in another and write in that country's language. So it'll be like I can't think of, there's someone specific that I saw this recently where they were born in like Haiti but moved immediately to Mexico and wrote in Spanish. And when they were like 2 years old and wrote in Spanish, I just put Mexico. I just put it's pretty judgment call on my part of what I'm putting into the database, and then if someone corrects it, they correct it, and people move. It's just like a source of reference, mainly for Spanish, I think.
okay. No, I was just curious because I mean,
French.
we've had this debate before with Sarah McNally and the way that she shelves her fiction section, and it's broken up into these countries, and I find it limiting and not entirely helpful to just pin somebody to a place.
Mine was more for research purposes too, and I started doing it because like with French is another one that if you say French you assume France, but like how many books are coming out from like the francophone countries? If I didn't have that information in there of where these people are born, then we wouldn't be able to have any idea without going through each and every one every single time. So it's basically for that.
No, and I think it's good. I think sometimes perhaps
This
there's
one's
space for more explanation of where they're from.
exactly, yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
Okay, so next up, from Argentina. Hold on, I need to find this one on here so I can read the description. From Argentina, we have The Missing Year of Juan Salvatierra by Pedro Mayral, translated from the Spanish by Nick Caster. And this is from New Vessel Press, which they just came into existence last year.
Never heard of them, yeah.
They were doing mostly ebooks, and I think they're doing a more strong mixture now of ebooks and print books. But they started out doing primarily all ebooks, translated, a few different languages. They maybe have 6 books out now at most. Anyways, this was one of the first ones. At the age of 9, Juan Salvatierra became mute following a horse riding accident. At 20, he began secretly painting a series of long rolls of canvas in which he minutely detailed 6 decades of life in his village on Argentina's river frontier with Uruguay. After the death of Salvatierra, his sons returned to the village from Buenos Aires to deal with their inheritance, a shed packed with painted rolls stretching over 2 miles in length and depicting personal and communal history. Museum curators from Europe come calling to acquire this strange gargantuan artwork, but an essential one of its rolls is missing. A search that illuminates the links between art and life ensues as an intrigue of family secrets buried in the past cast their shadows on the present. We ran a review of this not too long ago, actually. One of my students reviewed it, and she liked it. She likes a lot of like Spanish. She translates Spanish and likes Argentine writers exclusively. So it's a short book for that description.
It is short, isn't it?
118 pages.
Yeah.
But it's cool that they're finding. I think he's like they have one other book that I put in our like March preview by this Polish author who looks like the biggest badass ever. The New Vessel does. So they're finding some interesting.
I saw that.
Yeah,
Reading one of your blog posts, and you put it with the James Dean of Poland.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Does that guy look awesome?
He does. I would like. I'm not as cool as that.
I want to hang out with that guy. Like I just want to take some of that coolness over. But they're doing, and New Vessel's doing interesting stuff. And it's cool that they got on here at least to get them some attention. Like you hadn't heard of them. They're still relatively young, so hopefully this will give them a boost.
Moving on. Well, I imagine we're going to spend some time here.
Maybe. We've talked about this a lot.
From Spain, The Infatuations by Javier Marias, translated, of course, as always, from the Spanish by Margaret Jewel Costa, published by Canap, not Random House.
Oh, sorry. Did I put that on there?
It says Random House, but I feel like, they do have an imprint for a reason. No one's confusing Riverhead with Penguin Press. There's a point into these things to defend large publishing and their functioning for a little bit. All right. Frequent listeners of this podcast will know that Chad and I are both huge fans of Javier Marias, and fans of New Directions will know that, yes, we published about a dozen of Javier's novels and short stories prior to this book going over to Knopf. That said, we were both big fans of this. Here's the official description from Random House from Knopf, and bear in mind that they do feel like they're sort of introducing him to readers, because what we did apparently didn't matter. From the award-winning Spanish writer Javier Marias comes an extraordinary new book that has been a literary sensation around the world, an immersive, provocative novel propelled by a seemingly random murder that we come to understand, or do we, through one woman's ever-unfurling imagination and infatuations. At the Madrid cafe where she stops for breakfast each day before work, Maria Dols, I did not know that was her last name, finds herself drawn to a couple who is also there every morning. Though she can hardly explain it, observing what she imagines to be their unblemished life lifts her out of the doldrums of her own existence. I would like to add here that she works at a publishing house.
Yep.
But what begins as a mere observation turns into an increasingly complicated entanglement when the man is fatally stabbed in the street. Maria approaches the widow to offer her condolences, and at the couple's home she meets and falls in love with another man who sheds disturbing new light on the crime. As Maria recounts the story, we are given a murder mystery brilliantly reimagined as metaphysical inquiry, a novel that grapples with questions of love and death, guilt and obsession, chance and coincidence, how we are haunted by our losses, and above all, the slippery essence of the truth and how it is told. And I want to read the Fresh Air NPR blurb that they have on their website. The Infatuations is mysterious and seductive. It's got deception, it's got love affairs, it's got murder. The book is the most sheerly addictive thing Marias has ever written. Not true. Marias is a star writer in Europe where his bestsellers collect prizes the way Kardashians collect paparazzi.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding. This was on Fresh Air.
Oh my god.
He's been hailed in America too, yet he's never broken through like Haruki Murakami or Roberto Bolaño.
Oh, fuck that.
This should change with his new novel, The Infatuations, which is the ideal introduction to his work. All of that is wrong.
Wow, that is the most ignorant bullshit sort of quote I've ever heard. That's why Curtis White used to go off on and to attack Fresh Air as being the ultimate middle mind example of the middle mind. That's bad.
That's bad. So ignore what Fresh Air just said. This is not the best ideal introduction to his work.
No.
This is not the most addictive thing he has ever written. No. And he's nothing like Haruki Murakami.
No.
At all.
Right. I've got the book in front of me. In the back of it, they have the bio, but then it's like, Javier Maria says, All Souls, Dark Back of Time, A Heart So White, Tomorrow in the Battle Thick on Me, and When I Was Mortal are available in vintage paperback.
Yep. We still have the trilogy, I would like to point out.
Yeah.
So. Man. Anyway, I feel like this is going to be the Welbeck of this year's prizes.
Deserves to make the finalists, but it won't.
Exactly. Out of some weird... I don't know. Welbeck tends to really irritate people in a way that it doesn't make sense to me, but...
Yeah, me neither.
It continues to exist, so I'm through trying to make sense of it. Marias doesn't really irritate people. I just think people are going to feel like this is a minor Marias. Which is unfair, but also, I mean, it's kind of a compliment to Marias and the other books that he's written. So
it's true. Though I think only one of the trilogy was on the long list at one point in time. I think the third one, yeah. But I think part of the maybe it wasn't even. But I think part of the problem was because it's really one novel.
Yeah, no, you read. I mean, part one is like so close to being able to stand alone. Mm-hmm. That, you can almost consider it a standalone novel. It's close, but it's clearly like a cliffhanger and whatever.
Yeah.
Part two is, there's no way that makes any sense without having read the first one.
All right.
And the same with part three. I mean, you're clueless if you hadn't read the other two. So
yeah, so I think it was a hard one to pull out for that. But all the other books came out before the award existed. So this is the first legit standalone novel that has had a chance to be on the Best Translated Book Award list.
I will say one last thing then about this, that in Europe, and not so much here, it didn't really attract much attention because of this fact. It's the first novel he's written where the narrator is a female.
Right. As you were reading that, I listened to most of this on audiobook. And as you're reading it, all I could hear is that woman's voice that read because they had a woman read the entire book, or give the reading or whatever. But her voice is stuck in my head now. Like one of those things, like when you look at certain books, you know where things are on pages. To me, her voice is this book.
Got it.
I've never had that happen before because I just started listening to audiobooks.
I've never done.
It's kind of fun. Today I was listening to part of when I was going to get food before we get snowed in for the rest of our lives. The Scientology book by Lawrence Wright, which is amazingly good so far, but that's a separate podcast. There was one other thing I was going to say about this, but I forget what it is. Oh no, this is different. Random. The Welbeck reference. Have you seen that movie about him? Is that out now?
I don't think it's out yet. Or if it is, it's playing in like one theater. I need to look it up and see it though. It's a documentary about. Yeah, it reminds me of Harry's thing about My Life in CIA.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Where he was like, I just kind of forgot to go to the conference, but everyone thought I had been kidnapped and blah blah blah, whatever. He's like, fuck it, let's just make that. We'll make that a documentary. Let's see how it goes.
Oh man. Okay, we're gonna move so we can keep moving on with this. So next up, from Japan, a true novel by Minaya Mizumura, translated from the Japanese by Juliet Winters. And this is from Other Press, and it is it's up there with the Kaie as one of the most beautiful productions this year on the list. It's a 2-volume slipcase book. And the quality of the paper is pretty stunning. There's photos throughout it. Or not throughout, but there's a couple photos in it. It's really a well-designed package. In terms of the story, a true novel begins in New York in the 1960s, where we meet Taro, a relentlessly ambitious Japanese immigrant trying to make his fortune. Flashbacks and multi-layered stories reveal his life, an impoverished upbringing as an orphan, his eventual rise to wealth and success, despite racial and class prejudice, and an obsession with a girl from an affluent family who has haunted him his whole life. A true novel then widens into an examination of Japan's westernization and the emergence of a middle class. The winner of Japan's prestigious Yomiuri Literature Prize, Mizumura has written a beautiful novel with love at its core that reveals, above all, the power of storytelling. I only got through 20 pages of this last night before we started watching Legit and other TV stuff. But it's a long book. But the writing is pretty straight. Seems pretty interesting. This is one too that I would say there's something I read before that this is sort of based on a Jane Austen novel as well.
Okay.
But I feel like this is one that people who are looking for a really solidly good book with a plot, with characters, with those kind of things, this is the one from the list that they're going to like. And it's fucking gorgeous. The production of it is gorgeous.
Which I have to say, you don't get a sense of just by looking at it.
You really can't. I might take a picture because each cover has a different photograph on the front of it. And as I'm just flipping through this book, there's probably a dozen photographs of a creepy looking church, the oldest church in Karuizawa. It's in the woods, and it's sort of creepy looking. But then also a bicycle rental shop, all sorts of nice black and white photographs. And it's just it's a heavy, thick, amazing feeling book. It's pretty. It's really pretty. It's one of the ones that I think that you can't really, and I think George Carroll mentioned this in his shelf awareness article about this today. This is one that the ebook doesn't replicate what this is, which is kind of cool. So, okay, we'll go on from that one.
When I was looking this one up, I would have to say, and you might know better than me, that this one is probably the one that had the most sales.
I would guess so, but we never got a hard copy of this, which is weird. Because usually, everyone sends us the galley and the hard copy. I don't think any judge got the hard copy, and I've not seen it anywhere. But I assume that,
I've seen it in bookstores.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah. All right. So, also from Spain, I keep getting the Spanish ones.
Yeah.
In the Night of Time by Antonio Munoz Molina, translated from the Spanish by Edith Grossman. Published by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, which is part of the reason I think it probably sold more than other. But
probably.
Also, when you listen to the plot, it's just oh yeah, this sold. So, October 1936, Spanish architect Ignacio Abel arrives at Penn Station, the final stop on his journey from war-torn Madrid, where he has left behind his wife and children, abandoning them to uncertainty. Crossing the fragile borders of Europe, he reflects on months of fratricidal conflict in his embattled country, his own transformation from a bricklayer's son to a respected bourgeois husband and professional, and the all-consuming love affair with an American woman that forever alters his life. Winner of the 2012 Prix Méditerranée Étranger and hailed as a masterpiece, In the Night of Time is a sweeping grand novel and an indelible portrait of a shattered society written by one of Spain's most important contemporary novelists. Yep. For a certain group of reader out there, this book probably hit them perfectly, and they picked it up and probably read it rapidly and loved it. It doesn't appeal to me all that much, but I don't know.
I like the Spanish Civil War, so
I did too. I find it interesting. I just don't know if this is the angle I want of it.
Yeah. I don't know that they're. I'd be curious because I haven't started this one, but I have it in front of me. But I'd be curious to start it because I'm going to expose my biases, but I don't think that Houghton Mifflin Harcourt or, say, Knopp are the best at writing copy that appeals about books that might appeal to us.
This is true.
They emphasize things that I would not usually emphasize. So it's quite possible that this grand book is actually because his writing is strange and has like a very unique style. Like Sephiroth is very weird. We have an excerpt of his from a book that hasn't come out yet called The Polish Horseman that's in the anthology that's coming out this fall, and it's like complicated and dense and like interesting. It's not like your straightforward love story sort of writing. That doesn't seem to mesh very well. There's like love story stuff, but it's like way buried beneath like really interesting, strange sentences.
It's also a beautiful cover that does not evoke the Spanish Civil War at all, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm glad that they got away from, hey, we need to throw something that looks like Spain in the 1930s on the cover.
And it would be like sandy, sort of. And yeah, exactly. What is this supposed to be, actually?
I don't know. I feel like that's probably a building. I mean, didn't it say he was an architect?
Yeah, and he's like walking sort of superimposed on it.
Yeah.
At least it's not a Spanish Civil War.
Right. Did you ever see the movie The Cube?
Nope, I know what you're talking about, but I didn't see it.
That's what it kind of looks like to me, which has nothing to do with any of what we're talking about. But yeah. The Cube. Okay,
Sticking with Spanish, and this one I'm very excited about. From Guatemala, we have The African Shore by Rodrigo de Rosa, translated from the Spanish by Jeffrey Gray, and published by Yale University Press. And of the 5 that I started reading last night, this was by far my favorite one, not because the other ones are bad, but because this book is pretty fucking incredible. So it's got 2 stories. Basically one of a shepherd who wants to move to Spain, where the good life is, and the other of a tourist who loses his passport, and so he's stuck in Morocco. And there's that. Okay, I'm gonna devolve into the mundane and gross and all those kind of things because I think I might have the reputation for doing that. But if people are reading translations for like insight into other cultures or whatever, this book has in the first 10 pages some stunning shit in which like the shepherd wants to capture and does capture this owl because he I'm gonna give a bit of background. So the shepherd is a young kid. He's wearing a pair of Nikes that he got from his uncle, who is basically seems to be smuggling stuff from Spain to Morocco, and his uncle wants him to be like the watchman and to like flash a light when this boat comes so they can do their whole smuggling thing, and he has to stay awake all night to do so. So part of what he does is he captures an owl, because if you eat an owl's eye and make the other an amulet, you'll be able to stay awake forever. Or if you drink a glass of lice, is another technique that he uses. And then he also talks about fucking sheep, which, and then also rubbing donkey shit on his penis to make it grow bigger. This is all in like the first 12 pages of this book. Yeah, it's immediately like, yes, this is the book for me. But it is really like interesting. And to give you a selling point, from Roberto Bolaño, I'm an assiduous reader of Rodrigo de Rosa. To read his work is to learn to write, and it is also an invitation to the pure pleasures of being swept away by his sinister and fantastic narratives. And so far, 38 pages in, I'd agree with that. But I really like this book so far.
This is the worst cover of the bunch.
This is the one you don't like them. Oh, interesting. Because it's disgusting as shit. My kids see this
But that's all. Somebody found that picture and was like, oh, that's perfect. There's an owl. But
eating a frog.
Okay, but there's no design to the cover.
Oh,
it's just
have you
like,
seen
the image is like fine, but I don't know. I feel like they've put it way too much front and center, and they're just trying to gross you out or intrigue you or whatever.
Have you seen the other books in this series from Yale?
No.
They all have the same design.
Oh, wow.
So like that bottom part, if you could see the spine, you'd see that. But the bottom, like where the African shore, Rodrigo Rero, so that part is static, and then there's always an image. They're one for the Shen Sui book, 5 Spice Street. See, looks almost racist.
Yeah. Anyway,
I like that one a lot. That's okay. I got that. I'll take that as your pick for the worst cover. That makes sense.
I don't think it's crazy. I think that's the worst cover.
I thought there was a different one that you're going to go with, which is towards the bottom too. But we'll get there. I'll tell you which one I think is the worst cover.
All right. Up next, from Norway again, Through the Night. Why do I get all this? Like, I feel like I'm.
You get Scandinavia and Spain.
And also, but like the night isn't like half these titles.
It's true.
Through the Night by Stig Satterbakken, translated from the Norwegian by Sean Kinsella, published by Dalkey Archive. Dentist Carl Meyer's worst nightmare comes true when his son, Ola Jacob, takes his own life. The tragedy is the springboard for a complex novel posing essential questions about human experience. What does sorrow do to a person? How can one live with the pain of unbearable loss? How far can a man be driven by the grief and despair surrounding the death of his child? A dark and harrowing story, drawing in elements from dreams, fairy tales.
Tom? Welcome back, I guess, to the 3% podcast. We were recording this yesterday, Wednesday, and the Superstorm Vulcan took out the Wi-Fi at my house, so everything went down. We had to cut everything in the middle of our podcast, so I guess we're going to start back up today, Thursday, with you, Tom, as reading your first book.
Okay, yes, and I should say that while you were suffering through Superstorm in upstate New York, it was about 60 degrees and lightly drizzling here in New York. Although it's cold here today, so.
Oh, it's supposed to be 50 here tomorrow, so everything's supposed to just melt. It's just stupid. Stupid winter. It was actually, I didn't mind it though, because I was just in the house the whole day. So it was like all the snow going on outside didn't have any effect. I had wine, beer, food, podcast, soccer.
Patriot League championship.
Patriot League final. I only got to watch a few minutes of that, but that looked pretty bad.
It was pretty bad. Yes, it was.
It was maybe the worst looking basketball game I've seen in a while. No, I almost texted you because it was like, what was it, 19-15 at halftime? It's like, are they running this in fucking quarters? Like, what? That's a terrible score.
I had bet my friend a beer that BU, which is where he went to school, would not get to 35 points.
They did, though. They got, or no, what did they?
They only got 34.
I was going to say, I think they lost with 34, yeah. Well done. That's terrible.
Embarrassing game. Anyway, moving on.
Okay, you go.
Back to the book world. We still have many to cover here.
Yeah, we do.
9, 10, 10. Through the Night by Stig Satterbakken, translated from the Norwegian by Sean. Is that how you say Sean?
I guess so. I wasn't sure either.
I don't know how you could pronounce that any other way, to be honest.
Sean.
Yeah. Although I know a guy named Owen, which is spelled Eoian.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So
Owen Purcell is like that, too, yeah.
Anyway, so Sean Kinsella, and published by Dalkey Archive. The description is as follows. Dentist Carl Meyer's worst nightmare comes true when his son, Ola Jacob, takes his own life. The tragedy is the springboard for a complex novel posing essential questions about human experience. What does sorrow do to a person? How can one live with the pain of unbearable loss? How far can a man be driven by the grief and despair surrounding the death of his child? A dark and harrowing story, drawing in elements from dreams, fairy tales, and horror stories, the better to explore the mysterious depths of sorrow and love. Through the Night is Stig Satterbakken at his best. Do you know this book? I don't know anything about it.
I know the earlier book, Siamese, and
okay.
And Self-Control was part of his S trilogy, but I don't think that this is connected to those two.
I don't I mean, I read Siamese. I totally didn't even realize that was the same person.
Yeah.
That was years ago, wasn't it?
Isn't it? Wait. That's the same person. Yeah, it came out. We got the sample for that book when I was still at Delkey, so it would have been years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I guess it came out in 2010.
Really?
Yeah, they're a little slow, let's say, with things
Okay.
at times. But yeah, they did that, and then the other one, Self Control, which I think came out just a couple years ago. They don't have a date on it, pub date on it, so I'm not sure. But I think that came out just a couple of years ago, and then this one last year. So, yeah, I don't know if it's connected or not, but no, I haven't read this one yet.
I remember liking his writing, even though I clearly couldn't even remember his name. But
Right. They're pretty dark. And he killed himself,
I remember
too.
being very dark. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he killed himself as well.
God,
There were a few, this is really dark too, to continue on that line, but there were a couple authors, Norwegian authors, that Delkey published in the past 5 years or so that killed themselves. Yeah, he died in January of 2012. Yeah, it's pretty dark. Siamese came out in 1997, and then Self Control. Oh, there was a third book in this S trilogy called Sour Mug that's not been translated, I don't think. Yeah. Okay, maybe we should just move on. We'll go on to another semi uplifting book from France. We've got commentary by Marcel Savigno, translated from the French by Christine Schwartz-Hartley and Anna Moshevakis. And I'm going to read the description on this. I read part of this the other night, but the description is better than I can do. Commentary is a narrative, hovering between the genres of memoir, theory, and fiction, told by a dying woman whose abandonment by a lover precipitates a complex and moving investigation into suffering, solitude, friendship, and the nature of romantic and sexual love. Savigno died of tuberculosis after several stints in sanatoriums at the age of 34. Commentary was highly praised at its time by Paul Caudello, Paul Valéry, André Gide, Charles Dubois, is that Dubos? Renee Credval, and Clara Malraux. And it reminds me, I read the first 30 pages of it, and it reminds me a lot of there's that book that came out a few years ago, Voiceover, by Celine Curiel, I believe, and then also the oh geez, what's her name? I'm blanking out. She writes a lot of short books that Seven Stories publishes. Oh geez, she was a finalist too. Why can't I remember this? And I use her in my class, but she writes that kind of autofiction. The whole autofiction movement of French female writers seems to be very similar to the style of this book, where it's overly personal, very direct, very theoretically based, but basically just telling one person's life and one person's take on some very somewhat tragic circumstance in which this girl goes away to to get treated for her TB, and her boyfriend or whatever sends a letter saying he's getting married to someone else. He's done with her, and so she sort of ruminates on that. But it's got that kind of personal, emotional charge to it. It's pretty brutal.
Did you read the book we published last year, Astragal?
No, we sent it out for review.
I think it's probably in the same vein.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Which I'm not sure it's my favorite kind of French writing, but
yeah, I like it at times. I don't absolutely love it all the time either, but I do like these books every once in a while. They're almost palate cleansing in a way.
Yes, exactly.
Reads and in contrast to some of the other French writing that the Oulipo or some of the other people that might have been on here at some point that are more complicated and self-conscious. These are just brutal, well-written, emotional books.
Yes.
So yeah, and this is really pretty. This is another pretty one. Ugly Duckling does really good. I didn't know if I mentioned that, but Ugly Duckling Press is the publisher of this one, and they do very pretty stuff because they're obsessed with kind of letterpress and the quality and the physical production of the books. So this has a really nice cover stock. It's very nice to hold, well laid out, beautiful book.
Yeah, I've been the past 2 weeks. I've been doing this weird thing that Dustin from Melville House set up for us, Melville House, and New York Review Books, and Ugly Duckling. We both did these sort of weird rep picks thing, one at Greenlight Bookstore and one at McNally. And the guy from Ugly Duckling has talked about this book both times.
Oh, really?
And so I now feel like I've gotten the pitch on it several times. And But yeah, I didn't notice till yesterday that he was referring to it as a fiction memoir, and I was like, well, wait a minute, how did that happen? How did this get on the list? But it is indeed a beautiful book. All their books are beautiful.
Yeah, they really are.
And Dustin was saying that he had read this, and it was one of the best things he'd read all year. So,
wow,
could this be a dark horse?
I think for winning it, possibly. Although I think I don't know that it will, only because it is very, very short. Again, like it claims the book is listed as 127 pages, but the last 40 pages of that, no, the last couple of pages are just the afterword, but the first 20 some pages are an introduction, and if you look at it, the pages are very slim. There's not a lot. I read 43 pages in about 20 minutes. So it could be. I think it could be a finalist. It could win, but it is compared to some of these other ones, it's going to have that problem.
Right.
But we'll see. Speaking of long books.
Speaking of long books, from Lebanon, Leg Over Leg, Volume 1, by Ahmad Faris al-Shadyak.
Sure.
Translated from the Arabic by Humphrey Davies, published by New York University Press. Leg Over Leg recounts the life from birth to middle age, which I would probably add is only why it's only Volume 1.
It's 4 volumes.
Is it 4?
Yeah. The first 2 are translated and published this year, and the other 2 are coming out, I think, next year or the year after.
Okay.
But I don't think I think the whole thing goes through middle age.
Oh.
It's endlessly digressive. It doesn't go.
Oh, it doesn't say Volume 1 here. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Leg Over Leg recounts the life from birth to middle age of the Fariyak, alter ego of Ahmad Faris al-Shadyak, a pivotal figure in the intellectual and literary history of modern Arab world. The always edifying and often hilarious adventures of the Fariyak as he moves from his native Lebanon to Egypt, Malta, Tunis, England, and France provide the author with grist for wide-ranging discussions of the intellectual and social issues of his time, including the ignorance and corruption of the Lebanese religious and secular establishments, freedom of conscience, women's rights, sexual relationships between men and women, the manner and customs of Europeans and Middle Easterners, and the differences between contemporary European and Arabic literatures. The author also celebrates the genius and beauty of the classical Arabic language. Akin to Sterne and Rabelais in his satirical outlook and technical inventiveness, the author produced in Leg Over Leg a work that is unique and unclassifiable. It was initially widely condemned for its attacks on authority, its religious skepticism, and its, quote, obscenity. And later editions were often abridged. This is the first English translation of the work and reproduced the original Arabic text, published under the author's supervision in 1855. Yeah. I didn't realize it was so old.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that's so amazing. I've only read the first volume so far, but it's really cool. It is very digressive and choppy the way that, more so than Sterne. There's not really even one single plot. The guy kind of travels around more or less and talks to people, and then they'll have these digressive bits. It's got some weird features to it with the use of italics and things that he's doing with the Arab language that you just don't understand necessarily as someone who doesn't know anything about the Arab language. But it's really funny. There's a whole section of parts in which it's probably 10 pages describing the penis, vagina, sexual things, different terms of how you could say this using every possible term that you could use in Arabic or any language. So it's pretty wild in that way that it's 1855, an Arabic book, and obscene on that basic level. But that also aside from being obscene, also kind of points to what he does a lot in here is just include, instead of one word or one description for a thing, all the descriptions possible. So there's a lot of that kind of list making, Rabelais list making type stuff. One of the funniest bits is when there's a discussion about who would be the happiest person in the world, and each of these people at this bar give their own account of who would be the happiest, and it ends with the whore being the happiest because she not only gets to have sex all the time, but she gets money for it, so she's the luckiest. She doesn't lack for anything according to the book, but. Yeah, it's pretty wild, and I think that this could be a finalist. I don't know that it could win, but I think it could be definitely a finalist. And what I really hope happens is that through the publicity of this, that they release like a paperback volume with all of them in it, and none of the Arabic thing is cool, especially for these hardcovers, to be on the left page against the translated section. But I would love to see this at one point in time as like one volume, just the English, get rid of most of the footnotes, and make like a $20 paperback that people could buy, because each one of these volumes is $40.
Yeah, they do look. It looks beautiful.
I mean, it is and it isn't. Like it's kind of that standard. All their books have that same exact cover. Right. So even there's one sitting on my shelf that I have to enter into our database. That's it. Yeah, I wouldn't know that it was a different book if I hadn't looked at the title of it. But yeah, so it's very well produced, but it's very library like.
Before we move on to the next one, I just want to end with the only blurb on the site that I found interesting is attributed to the complete review, which I assume means that it's Michael Orthofer himself. And he says, "It is not too early to state that the publication of this work in this edition is a game changer. This is a foundational work of modern Arabic literature, and its publication in English is long overdue. But given how it is presented here, it was perhaps worth the wait. This edition, with helpful endnotes, the original Arabic text, and in a translation that both reads well and appears to closely mirror the original, seems in almost every way ideal. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that this is the most important literary publication of a translation into English in terms of literary history and our understanding of it in years."
Wow. He might be right. I mean, there's nothing, I can't think of anything like this that alters, or that would be so historic, important, and alter the way that you think about a country's literature or language's literature.
Yeah.
It's pretty badass.
Yes.
It's pretty badass. So, moving on, we've got from Iceland, The Whispering Muse by Schoen, translated from the Icelandic by Victoria Cribb, and published by FSG. This is one of the 2 books that they have on the list. And I'll read their description, because I read this for a book club, for the book club we have here a long time ago. I really liked it, but here's their description. The year is 1949, and Valdemar Haraldsson, an eccentric Icelander with elevated ideas about the influence of fish consumption on Nordic civilization, has had the extraordinary good fortune to be invited to join a Danish merchant ship on its way to the Black Sea. Among the crew is the mythical hero, I don't know how to say that, is it Canissus?
I don't
know. Disguised as a second mate. Every evening after dinner, he entrances his fellow travelers with a tale of how he sailed with the fabled vessel the Argo on his quest to retrieve the Golden Fleece. What unfolds is a slender but masterful, brilliant, and always entertaining novel that ranges deftly from the comic to the mythic as it weaves together tales of antiquity with the modern world in a voice so singular as to seem possessed. This is, I don't know if you've read any of his books. I like the Blue Fox a lot, too. There's 3 of his books that are available from FSG in these kind of matching sci-fi looking covers. And they're all pretty interesting. Like they're slender, they're very sharp, very sharply written. And Schoen's kind of an amazing guy. He also he's a musician as well. He worked with Bjork, did the stuff for Dancer in the Dark. But his writing is great. And the Blue Fox is really mythical and condensed and like visual in a sense, and this one's more of like a tale telling. But what's great about it is that the main character, this Valdemar Haraldsson, is just annoying as shit, and like the whole time you're reading it, like he's just super annoying, and it's kind of fun to be with someone that's that kind of like out of touch and just kind of unclear as to like how much he's pissing off everyone else by being such an annoying person the entire book. But it also has it was a good book club book because it has some weird stuff that happens at the end that brings into question kind of what the whole metaphor is about. But I like this a lot. I think Schoen's really cool. But I also love everything from Iceland, so it's a given. Universally, this one's a given. Yeah.
I will just say that copy reads so much more like big publisher copy than
it really does.
The past few we've been doing. It's like, oh wow, all of a sudden here's very neat and pretty and consumer driven sort of copy.
I don't even know that that's really what people would really like this book for, to be honest.
No, exactly. And it seems like they're missing the boat, no pun intended.
It's horrible. I was looking to see if I had a bit. Because he always talks about eating fish and how everyone's derived from the Nordic people are better than everyone else because they eat the most fish. And then we all evolved from fish. All evolved from fish. Everything else is a lie. It's it's really entertaining. His show's really good. He has a new book I think that FSG is going to be doing too. That's coming out, God knows when, but probably 2015. But it came out in Iceland last fall.
Yeah, they released these in a flurry. And
they did well. They were kind of screwed. Like we were talking about yesterday, actually, was that the UK versions were available here from the Telegraph, except for the Whispering Muse. So they bought the Whispering Muse and did it as the hardcover, and the other two they did as the paperback at the same time.
Got it.
And that's why they could try and get like reviews for Shown and the Whispering Muse, but and tie in these other two books. So
right,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Next. From the Netherlands, I see that one just sounds.
That sounds so weird because it ends with lands. Like it doesn't feel like it can be like a singular name. It's referring to a place. It seems,
especially like in foreign languages, like it's actually just called whatever Nether and lands are in those foreign languages.
Yeah,
like, very clearly like lowlands or like
right.
I don't know.
If it was singular, it would sound more like a country, Netherland.
Right.
But because it's plural, it's just yeah. They get a duh. Screw them.
And then the language is Dutch. It's all just very, very confusing. Anyway, from Netherlands, The Forbidden Kingdom by Jan Jacob Slauerhoff, translated from the Dutch by Paul Vincent, published by Pushkin Press. A classic of early modernism, The Forbidden Kingdom. I'm not reading the title. Is the masterwork of Jan Jacob Slauerhoff, a romantic tale of adventure, seafaring, and colonialism, told through an experimental narrative. An intoxicating mix of time travel and adventure, The Forbidden Kingdom revolves around the Portuguese imperial outpost of Macau in China. Two men journey to the colony, the exiled 16th century poet Louis de Camões, author of The Lusíads, and a 20th century ship's wireless operator. With their overlapping stories, Slauerhoff draws his reader into a dazzling world of exoticism, betrayal, and exile, where past and present merge and the possibility of death is never far away.
It's funny how so many of these, when we read them back to back, sort of tie together in some way or have some...
Isn't that weird? Yeah.
It's really weird. So you got another ship book.
Another ship book, another metaphor, I'm guessing, trying to be drawn with the two time travel thing. When did time travel, like these parallel journeys in different times, become such a trope?
Time Traveler's Wife? No, I don't know.
I don't know. Well, God, that seems wrong.
It does. But it does happen a lot.
It happens a lot. And I was just listening to, do you know this podcast, How Did This Get Made?
No.
It's, you would actually really appreciate this. This is a total diversion, but well worth it, I promise you. So it's Andre from The League.
Oh, yeah. I love him.
Paul Scher.
I saw him in a bar in Brooklyn once.
That's funny because I see the other guy, the co-host of the show, is Rafi, cousin Rafi.
No shit, you see Rafi?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that guy.
Oh, he's awesome, but I never know what to say to him. His real name is Jason Mantzoukas, and then so those two, and then Paul's wife, an actress and comedian named June Diane Raphael, they do a podcast called How Did This Get Made, where they watch bad movies,
right,
and then just talk about them for an hour and a half, and it's amazing. And they tend to do like old movies and all kinds of random stuff, like Howard the Duck, and just god awful movies like that. The Congo, all these things. But they just did, and I don't know why, because they had to go to the movie theater to do it, was Winter's Tale.
Oh, really?
And I've never read the book. I didn't know what it's about. The movie sounds just dreadfully awful. But it does involve this, like, two stories in New York about love and romance and miracles and blah, 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 set 100 years apart. You know what I mean? And that was a hugely successful book, right?
I guess so. We used to sell it in the books. I feel like that's been out for a long time.
It was like the late 80s, I think.
Yeah, and it's fat. We always used to have it there, but I don't feel like it sold a lot.
I mean, it was a New York Times bestseller. It got rave reviews. I mean, it's sold a ton of copies over the years, and it's had many, many people attached to it, try to direct it and make a movie out of it. Mm-hmm. Apparently, who was it? Somebody said like it was just an unfilmable movie and dropped it and moved on, and then somehow they got this other guy to try to make a movie of it, and apparently it's terrible. Anyway, but yes, the parallel stories thing over with centuries in between, all sort of going on the same plot. It's
God, I
a
feel like
thing.
there's so many of those. Yeah. Huh.
Which it's not an indictment. I just think it's interesting. That's
and
all.
that it's a trend. Yeah. This is the book that I had chosen as the worst cover.
This is a pretty bad cover, and I will say, I went to all the individual websites to gather the summaries instead of just going to Amazon. Their website is just awful.
Really, I should have looked at this before because I did that thing at AWP on shitty websites.
First and foremost that is a bad cover, but but they have the whole black background, white text.
Wow, yeah.
On their website. Never a good idea. Web designers, publishers, never a good idea.
You know what? I think they may have made this in Shopify.
Really?
I might be wrong, but it looks a lot like our site's template.
They just didn't bother changing it in any way?
I don't know. It has like a similar, and it may be completely wrong, so I probably shouldn't say that, but it has a similar vibe to it, yeah. Huh.
Anyway,
Interesting. But yeah, this is the one that I feel like...
I like what they do. I really wish they would fix their website a little bit.
Yeah. I don't like those covers. Like, it reminds me a bit of Archipelago's covers, too. Which I like them, and they're pretty I like the material of them more than, like... I feel like they just were from a library. I feel like this book came out in, like, 1946, and someone just pulled it off a library shelf and then just put it in front of us on the screen.
Yeah, and that's how Archipelago books feel to me. I don't know. Are they as an aesthetic choice? Do you think it's that's what they like, or is it that they're trying to become instant classics and not be tied to any one era of publishing and design trends or something like that? I
guess so. I don't really know. I feel like Archipelagos is that it's that once they set that in motion, they just stuck with it. And Pushkin has a lot of books that are similar to this, but I feel like they did do a few that weren't. The box around the picture. One of the weird things too is you notice that the Pushkin press is the top thing on there, on that cover, which seems very strange to me right now. That would be the number one.
Yeah, it is very odd. I agree.
At the top,
I'm looking at their other covers. Their name is very large on a lot of these covers.
That's interesting.
Huh. That's okay. Like, we at New Directions are quite proud of ourselves, but we don't even put our name on the
Wow, you're right. Holy shit.
Isn't it weird?
They even have it boxed off on the Talking to Ourselves Andres Newman thing. Oh my god, yeah, it's on every... Do we even put our cover on name on the... We don't.
Ours.
We do it on the spine.
We put our colophon on the spine.
Yeah. Same here, and then the website on the back.
Yeah.
And then on the copyright page. Or the copyright page, the big title page.
So I guess they're they're trying to...
I didn't realize they did the UK edition of Talking to Ourselves by Andres Newman, but that book is my favorite to win this award next year. I think it's a lock for the finalists, and it very well could just win straight away. Just throw that out there 1 year in advance. Oh, speaking of, and I'm glad that we did admit that this is the second day. I had a dream last night. I tell you,
now we're devolving.
No. This is one quick thing because of my prediction of last year. Is I've had dreams many years about the NCAA tournament. Like I had a dream that Butler made it to the Final Four the first year they made it to the Final Four, so I picked them through the tournament, and that was great for me. Last night I had a dream that Creighton, Kansas, and Michigan were in the Final Four. That's the end of it. No more. We can move on.
That's only 3 teams.
I know. I don't know who they were playing. I can't remember. I don't know who. I think Michigan was playing someone, was playing the 4th team, but I don't know who they were playing.
That 4th team that you can't remember is probably a 12 seed that no one is expecting.
Exactly. But there you go. If that happens, it's now on record. Sticking with the foreigners, though, Portobello Books, we have from the Czech Republic, The Devil's Workshop by Jakub Topol, translated from the Czech by Alex Zucker. And, where did he go? There you are. Okay, here's the description. A young boy grows up in Terezin, an infamous fortress town with a sinister past. Together with his friends, he happily plays in this former Nazi prison, scouting the tunnels for fragments of history under the careful eye of one of its survivors, Uncle Lebo, until one day there's an accident and he is forced to leave. Returning to Terezin many years later, he joins Lebo's campaign to preserve the town, but before long, the authorities impose a brutal crackdown, chaos ensues, and the narrator finds himself fleeing to Belarus, where fresh horrors drive him ever closer to the evils he had hoped to escape. Bold, brilliant, and blackly comic, The Devil's Workshop paints a deeply troubling portrait of two countries dealing with their ghosts and asks, at what point do we consign the past to history? Yeah, okay, so let me we have this thing, you're emailed in on this, you know about it, but they're going to be, Biblioasis, the Canadian-based press that does some translation stuff and a lot of other things too, is going to, on their blog, run as a promo for the Best Translated Book Award, one sentence from each of the 25 books, which we thought we could do some fun things with if we have all these sentences. And the one for The Devil's Workshop is one of my favorite ones. They gave us two choices. They're not using the choice I think they should. But one of the choices was, and the bulldozers came in the morning.
Okay.
I like that one. But my favorite line is coming up. It's the very last book that we cover, and I'm going to read the one line from that, and that's the most selling one-line sentence I've seen.
Who did someone from my office send you something from Sayobo?
Not that I'm aware of, but they're sending them mostly to the guy at Biblioasis.
Okay.
I'm going to ask him today in like a couple hours, because there are a couple people who emailed me about it as well, which ones he still needs.
Because a lot of the sentences
are like a page, right?
At least.
The sentence for infatuations is like 4 lines long.
Yeah.
It's kind of awesome. But I think it would be pretty cool if you did that like without any names attached to it and just had those sentences there. And you could pick whichever one you were attracted to and click on it and see which book it was. It'd be kind of interesting to see which ones you as a person, as a reader, were like, I like this. And then, I never would have picked that book up.
Right.
So
it is, yeah.
We'll see. I've got nothing more to say about Jakob Tobel. He has a couple books available in English already, like City Sister Silver, which is a big deal when it came out in the late 80s, maybe late 90s. But yeah, he's Alex has been translating him for a while, and this is the most recent one, which I don't have a copy of. So
I don't like this cover. I'm not saying it's awful, but they tried a little too hard, I think.
I thought this one would be one that you'd like, but this is kind of like a quasi. It's not really like that Russian formalist, but it's in that
close
direction.
It's trying really hard, but it's a little too much.
Yeah. So a lot of they've got it. Do they have a swastika on here?
No, they have the SS symbol.
Oh man, those swastikas sell.
Do they?
they seem to. I don't know why, but they always
swastikas.
You put that on there, it just sells. Like people pick it up.
I'll keep that in mind.
Anyways, this one's yours.
Up next, we have from Spain, The End of Love by Marcos Girold Torrente, translated from the Spanish by Catherine Silver and published by McSweeney's. Catherine, of course, does a lot of work for New Directions. Mm-hmm. We love her. In this quartet of mesmerizing stories, Marcos Girold Torrente explores the confounding double-edged promise of love. Each finds a man carefully turning over his past, trying to fathom how the distance between people can become suddenly unbridgeable. Two tourists visit a remote island off the coast of Africa and are undone by a disconcerting encounter with another couple. A young man, enchanted by his bohemian cousin and her husband, watches them fall into a state of resentful dependence over the course of decades. A chaste but all-consuming love affair between a troubled boy and a wealthy but equally troubled girl leaves a scar that never heals. The son of divorced parents tries in vain to reunite them before realizing why he is wrong to do so. In The End of Love, Girold Torrente forges discomforting and gripping dramas from the small but consequential misunderstandings that shape our lives. And I just wanted to throw in from Booklist a blurb that was on McSweeney's website. I'm guessing this just came out in like December or something?
I think so. They're sending a copy here right now, so...
Torrente propels characters through time, jumping hours, weeks, and years, covering at one point decades in a single clause, building tension with Roberto Bolaño-like accumulation of plot, often waiting until the action is ended to divulge a key factor, coincidental non sequitur that unlocks the truth. This is Torrente's first book to appear in English, with luck, the first of many. Is that lazy on Booklist's part to compare him to Bolaño? And look, what they go on to say after they mention Bolaño is very Bolaño, but he's from Spain. I don't know. I feel
like it's everyone's thing now. Like it's not even lazy. It's just like if you want a certain group of people to pay attention, you have to mention Bolaño in there. Like the way they used to mention Borges with stuff. and still
Yeah.
do to certain ways, but or Kafka.
Oh my God, Kafka. Yeah.
Like if you don't mention Kafka, it somehow doesn't count, right?
Right.
Like no one will read it unless it's like Kafka.
Right.
But yeah, it kind of is. I don't. And those comparisons are whatever. I mean, I get it, and it, like sometimes they're very useful, but sometimes they're just like putting in names that people recognize.
Yeah. It's funny. One of our old Barbara, my boss, is very fond of quoting one of our old editors in chief, who is since passed away, Griselda, who was famous for saying apparently she hated putting them in blurbs and in rep notes and any of that sort of stuff, comparisons, and she used to say comparisons are odious. So it's like a motto in the New Directions office. We don't ever make them in our copy. So.
Although didn't we talk once about how you like the comparisons of stuff? Like it was
I
for
would swing it on a personal note.
oh, okay.
If I'm talking to someone, I will say like, this is kind of like this. You
Right.
might like this, but we will never put it on a book ever.
Huh.
We don't want to do that. So
Funny. Interesting. Okay. Well, moving on to France, we have Red Grass by Boris Vian, translated from the French by Paul Knobloch, and published by Tam Tam Books, which is run by Tosh Berman, who you might know.
I do.
Yeah, who ran or was the buyer for Book Soup for many a year. He's been running Tam Tam Books for, I want to say like a decade. Mainly with the purpose of publishing Serge Gainsbourg and Boris Vian's literary works. So he's done a number of Vian books, and this is the most recent one. And I started reading this the other night too, and it reminded me of why I like Boris Vian. Well, wait, to sort of tie this together, to make more connections between this list, Vian is another person who died tragically young. Do you know the story of how he died?
No, but I'm seeing 39.
39. So this is sort of like a mythical, may not be entirely accurate story, but he died of a heart attack. But the deal was that he wrote, have you read I Spit on Your Graves?
Mm-mm.
It seems like a book that you would really like. That was supposedly written by Vernon Sullivan, a black man from the South in the U.S., about being about a lynching of a black man who rapes a white girl. It's sort of controversial. Boris Vian claimed that he had translated it from English into French, and became like a big pulp hit. And also like there was one of those like it's like someone murdered someone, left that book there as like the calling card sort of reason why, or explanation of the murder sort of thing. So there was a trial about it or related to it, and Vian had to admit that he was the writer and not just a translator, and that Vernon Sullivan did not exist. Anyways, they eventually made a movie of it, but Vian wanted to be involved in the movie, and the directors and everyone were like, fuck no, get away from us, you can't come here, you're interfering, no. And so on the night of the premiere, or when they were premiering the movie, he snuck into the movie theater, and in the first scene when they were saying that like they're speaking in English and they're supposed to be Americans, right? He stood up, he's like, these are supposed to be Americans, my ass, and died of a heart attack. And they did find him dead of a heart attack in the movie theater. Now, if he said that or not, sort of like
Right.
not verified or whatever. But it's a pretty tragic way to go. And Red Grass was one of his somewhat earlier books. We published one at Delkey, Heart Snatcher, which is amazingly good. And that was his last book that he wrote before he died. This was a bit earlier, after he'd had some success, and it was rejected by like Raymond Queneau, was the editor at Gallimard that was a big champion of his, and I was working with him, and had to reject this book and another one of his. So he's sort of down on his luck. And I'll just read the book's description. Sorry, this is going on a little bit long, but here you go. Okay. Boris Vian was a magnificent jack of all trades, actor, jazz critic, engineer, musician, playwright, songwriter, translator, not to mention the leading socialite of the Saint-Germain-des-Prés scene. His third major novel, Red Grass, is a provocative narrative about an engineer, Wolf, who invents a bizarre machine that allows him to revisit his past and erase inhibiting memories. A frothing mixture of Breton, Freud, Carroll, Hammett, Kafka, and Wells, Red Grass is one of Vian's finest and most enduring works, a satire and psychoanalysis, which Vian wholly and vigorously disapproved of, that inflects science fiction with dark absurdity and the author's great wit. Much in the novel can be regarded as autobiography, as our hero attempts to liberate himself from the past traumatic events in the arenas of religion, social life, and, of course, sex. Red Grass is translated by Vian scholar Paul Knobloch. But it's pretty fun because it has like a sort of sci-fi vibe to it, but also like seems fairly straightforward at first. Like these two characters are working on this big machine. They think that it's finally fixing to work. They go to have dinner, and then they'll have these bits that are like, and at dinner they talked about marbles and passing the candles and all these like things that don't make any sense, that are sort of surreal. And then like a couple of pages later, I'll relate their conversation. And it's like basically exactly that, but it's like complete non sequiturs and don't really make sense. And there's a dog that sort of talks. and wanders around with them. So it's pretty that mixture of like right in that French period of like partially surreal, partially like the Oulipo, and in between all of those kind of things. But he was an interesting guy.
I have nothing to add to that except it does sound very good and right up my alley and all of that. This was my favorite cover. I think this is the best.
Oh yeah, I like this a lot. You should see the inside of it. I'll send you a picture, but I'll put it online if I can. But it's got like, so there's the red grass, the outside cover that you can see, and on the inside flap, it's like this old. It looks like what would be like a kind of French Russian poster for red grass, but like the herb whatever, and these numbers on it. But it looks super cool that when you open it up, it's got this other thing in it. When I send you a picture and post it, you guys will know what I mean. But it's pretty cool. It's really well done. I like Tosh a lot, and I know that he was really excited that the book made the long list. So kudos to him.
All right, trying to wrap this up. 2 more.
Almost there.
From Germany, City of Angels, or The Overcoat of Dr. Freud by Christa Wolf, translated from the German by Damien Searles, published by FSG. And as you mentioned already, this is Damien's second book on this particular list. Stunning final novel from East Germany's most acclaimed writer. 3 years after... That was the header, by the way. If you go to the website, if you go to FSG's website, they have a header that says, the stunning final novel from East Germany's most acclaimed writer.
Okay.
And the copy begins. 3 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the writer Christa Wolf was granted access to her newly declassified Stasi files. Known for her defiance and outspokenness, Wolf was not especially surprised to discover 42 volumes of documents produced by the East German secret police. But what was surprising was a thin green folder whose contents told an unfamiliar and disturbing story. In the early 1960s, Wolf herself had been an informant for the communist government. And yet, 30 years on, she had absolutely no recollection of it. Wolf's extraordinary autobiographical final novel is an account of what it was like to reckon with such a shocking discovery. Based on the year she spent in Los Angeles after these explosive revelations, City of Angels is at once a powerful examination of memory and a surprisingly funny and touching exploration of LA, a city strikingly different from any Wolf had ever visited. Even as she reflects on the burdens of 20th century history, Wolf describes the pleasures of driving a Geo Metro down Wilshire Boulevard and watching episodes of Star Trek late at night. Rich with philosophical insights, personal revelations, and vivid descriptions of a diverse city and its citizens, City of Angels is a profoundly humane and disarmingly honest novel and a powerful conclusion to a remarkable career in letters. I have 2 blurbs to read. One from the New Yorker. I don't know who said it, but it says, Searles' excellent translation effectively conveys Wolf's wordplay, which I had to throw that in because it's about translation. Mm-hmm. And then we have one from Sarah Gerard.
Oh, wow.
Who, this was for your website.
I know. Yeah, I see that now.
But Sarah used to work at McNally Jackson and as a bookseller, and now works for Bomb Magazine, and she is also a writer. And she recently got a book deal, by the way. I feel like we should congratulate her on the air with $2 Radio, a very fine publisher. So, she said, Wolf's ability to create layers of meaning in a peripatetic structure across 3, sometimes 4 different time periods is astounding. Damien Searles has done a knockout job here. The prose is lovely, but invisible in the reading, which is exactly what it should be.
That's perfect. She's doing the Why This Book Should Win write-up as well.
I see.
On the 31st. But yeah, we had this book, we sent it out to her to review, so I don't know that we have a copy in the office anymore, but we had the hardcover for a while, and it looks really interesting.
Yeah, no, this sounds really good. I have a copy. I've not yet gotten to it, and I meant to read it when I was in LA, but I don't know, sort of got caught up.
Yeah, as you do in LA.
As you do in LA, yes. Oh, yes. Remind me at the end. I have something to tell you, but go ahead.
Okay. So the last book on our list, the 25th one, from China, we have Sandalwood Death by Mo Yan, translated from the Chinese by Howard Goldblatt, and published by the University of Oklahoma Press under their Chinese Literature Today book series. Big book. Let me read you the description, then I'll give you the sentence. Sandalwood Death is set during the Boxer Rebellion, 1898 through 1901, an anti-imperialist struggle waged by North China's farmers and craftsmen in opposition to Western influence. Against a broad historical canvas, the novel centers on the interplay between its female protagonist, Sun Mianyang, and the three paternal figures in her life. One of these men is her biological father, Sun Bing, an opera virtuoso and leader of the Boxer Rebellion. As the bitter events surrounding the revolt unfold, we watch Sun Bing march toward his cruel fate, the gruesome, quote-unquote, sandalwood punishment, whose purpose, as in crucifixions, is to keep the condemned individual alive in mind-numbing pain as long as possible. Filled with essential imagery and lacerating expressions for which Moyan is so celebrated, Sandalwood Death brilliantly exhibits a range of artistic styles, from stylized arias in poetry to the antiquated idiom of late imperial China to contemporary prose. A starkly beautiful language is here masterfully rendered into English by renowned translator Howard Goldblatt. Now, I really liked the one Moyan book I read, which was the one that Seagull did last year, Pow. And it sort of surprised me by like how kind of experimental and interesting it really was. And I haven't gotten around to this one yet. I've had it for a while, but super fat. But the one lines thing, the one from Howard sent to everyone is this: the finest play ever staged cannot compete with the spectacle of a public slicing.
Wow. Okay.
Which, yeah, that sort of wins me over. This is a big book, but I do want to read this one out of them because I think that he's really cool and interesting. And this book apparently has like a 20-page the huge execution scene in this whole album is basically all this descriptions of this man being tortured. So that, uplifting reading for a Friday night.
I have to say, winning the Nobel is one thing, but winning that and the best translated book for the same year, I don't know.
I don't know that this one can win. Just I don't know why.
It's overreaching, I think.
Yeah, he's trying to do too much. No, but he's interesting. He's one of the people. I don't know if we talked about this on here or not, but like his books, like the early books of his, the way that they were presented by, who was it? Is it Arcade published him before? I think so. Yeah, are like the big here's a book from China. This is the insight into the Chinese mind, like that kind of stuff. And then now, after, especially with Seagull and now University of Oklahoma to some degree as well, plus the fact that he won the Nobel Prize, it's much more about the writing. And I think that's much more interesting to me now. I never would have paid attention before, so I don't really care about that kind of stuff.
Right.
But this kind of like all the different styles, all the different stuff, that makes it sound pretty cool. And that's it. We did all of them.
That's it. I mean, that's going to be a long podcast, but you know what? It needed to be done.
And it's worth it.
I'm
sure you guys listened all the way through.
Yeah. I hope they found some books that they might find interesting.
Exactly.
So the one thing I wanted to mention, because we've decided that our next podcast will be about David Peace, and you're going to read. Which ones are you going to read?
I thought we were going to do the one Andrew wants to come on and talk about Publishers Weekly and books, and then also the tournament. But you're in Dubai.
I will be in Dubai. This is true.
So if you can or can't do it, we'll figure something out.
Okay.
But yeah, then we'll do the David Peace one is like 2 weeks from today or whatever.
And so for the David Peace one, you were texting me about the soccer books, which I, of course, have no interest in reading because I don't really like soccer. But they're hailed as like the best books about sports ever written and blah, 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 and whatever. So are you reading...
I'm reading...
the short one or the long one?
The short one. I read Tokyo Year Zero and The Occupied City, which are like the crime ones set in Tokyo, which are very experimental and seem very different from like the Red Riding Quartet.
Well, which is what I'm going to read.
Right, which is what you're going to read. And then the Damned United is the one that I'm going to read that should arrive today or tomorrow in the mail. And then the Bread or Dead doesn't come out. They sent me a PDF of it, but fuck that. Like it's 700 and some pages long.
Yeah. And
I don't like PDFs, and I couldn't figure out how to convert it into getting it onto my Kindle, so I just gave up. Yeah. I'll wait for the book.
Anyway, so I had ordered the Red Riding Quartet from Powell's, and so I had them shipped. Anyone who lives in New York understands this. It's very dicey to have things shipped to your apartment for a number of reasons. So I always have things. I used to have things sent to the New Directions office, or now I just have them sent to my girlfriend's gallery since I don't really go to the New Directions office all that often. And so I had been away, and at some point once I was back, she said, "Oh, by the way, there's some books at the office." And I was like, "Oh, what are they?" And she said, "Oh, I can't remember what they are, but there's a blurb on the cover by George Perec." And I was like, George Perec. I was like, all I remember reading is, or ordering was the these like noir crime things. And they have titles like and he just gave her the years, and I was like 1974, 70. He was like, yeah, that's it. I was like, George Perec? She's like, yeah, don't you read him? I was like, well, yes, but George Perec? Are you sure? She's like, I'm pretty sure. So she brings it home. It's not George Perec, obviously. It's George Pelicanos.
That makes a little more sense.
It makes a hell of a lot more sense. I just thought it was hilarious that my girlfriend confused George Pelicanos and George Perec.
I'm pretty sure George Perec was dead before any of those books were written.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about David Peace. I really like the Tokyo books, and the Damned United. I'm really excited about both of those. But I do like soccer. But I think it's also like not just about soccer.
Okay.
I think that they're more like personality things.
Dustin was saying that there's a lot of things going on with interesting things going on in the writing and in repetition and things like that. So, I'll let you read it and will not dismiss it entirely because it happens to be about soccer.
I think Red or Dead is the more repetitive one, that he created that style of like this repetition. He does a lot of that in Tokyo Year Zero too. We're going to get into that in the next one, but I think the Damned United is different than that. He seems to switch up. I mean, the two Tokyo books are really different from one another.
Yeah, I haven't read anything yet, so we'll see how these...
I ordered all of those too, because I want to read all of them. He's my new person for this year.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anyways.
I have one other thing. This can be edited out. So I know I texted you last night that I was watching...
the D-League.
So we were watching CONCACAF was on one of the TVs at the bar. And this is a good bar. They have like 8 TVs, and they'll change the channels or whatever. So we were facing this guy who was watching over our shoulders that CONCACAF game. And it was, what the fuck are they called? Sporting Kansas City or something like that?
Yeah.
Against a Mexican team, right?
Right.
And Kansas City scored at some point, and he was cheering and whatever. He was the only one paying attention to this, I should say. So he's cheering. And then that game ends, and then they go right on to the next one. I'm sure these are all replays, right? And so it was like the LA, what are they called?
Galaxy.
Is that right?
Yep.
I thought that was the WNBA team.
No, isn't the LA Sparks is the WNBA?
Sparks, okay. Too many.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then that game comes on, and he's cheering for the LA Galaxy, and I was just like, he is one of these people. He is a fucking MLS fan. He's just cheering for the MLS.
That's the worst.
Oh, yeah, he was awful.
And they won, too, unfortunately. I just love fuck them. The team that I can't follow the MLS no matter what. I've tried before. I just can't do it for whatever reason. But the CONCACAF, I like trying to find like a crazy Latin American team to support. But this is where we're changing our soccer team name to the Terminal Tigres because of UANL is a Mexican league team. That's the Tigres that Kaya and I were watching a game last year, and they're sponsored by Banamex, that bank, but she misread it as Bananamex and thought for sure it was Bananamex was the business sponsor of the Tigres. So which is awesome because Bananamex would be the coolest thing ever. So we came up with all sorts of jokes about people playing Banana Box and Bananamex stuff. But so we're gonna change our name to that. But they're not in this league, and none of it makes fucking sense for the Champions League because it depends on like it's at a weird time. I don't even want to get into it. You'd be bored to death. But like it really like it's not if you win your league, you don't necessarily make it into the Champions League. It's just, it's super fucked up. Yeah, and the Mexican league it seems apparently very corrupt. just gonna throw that out there. As far as I can understand from reading about it, they have 2 seasons every year. Which what the hell is that about? And they also seem very corrupt. So that's it.
That seems weird.
Yeah, they have a summer and a winter season. And like if you win one, you sometimes get to go to the Champions League, but the team that would have made it last time got like some penalty for like cheating in all sorts of ways. So they weren't allowed to go, and it's all very confusing. And they have teams from like Haiti and shit. Like, yeah. Fuck that. Fuck the CONCACAF thing.
Anyway. So yeah, I'll be in Dubai, but
when are you leaving?
Sunday.
Wow. That'll be fun. It's interesting. It's really it'll be nice and warm. But Dubai's kind of of the 3 cities that are big cities that are right there is the one that has the most stuff going on, because there's actual like nightclubs and stuff like that. But it's insanely expensive, and like I don't know. I just thought it was interesting to see, especially the Burj Khalifa. But I don't really like shopping or like things like that, and that's all I could ever figure out what to do there. I just went for walks, and it's fucking hot as shit though.
Yes, apparently it's gonna be hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should, if you're gonna go in the Burj Khalifa, one trick that you need to know is sign up right now, and you can buy the time that you're gonna go for like $10 to go up the escalator or the elevator to the top of it for like $10. But if you do it when you're there, it's like $55.
I don't think I can do that. I might fear of heights.
Oh, you have? Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, it's gigantic. When you see it, it looks like my only interpretation of it. It looks like something that would come in a Fantastic Four movie from outer space and just crash into the ground.
Jesus,
That's what it looks like. So, anyways, okay. Well, I gotta go work on this NEA grant that I couldn't do yesterday because it kept fucking cutting. Because we do it all online now, and because the internet kept cutting out on me, I couldn't do any part of it.
Yeah.
It's so annoying. But okay. Well, I will talk to you later.
All right.
Have fun. Thanks, man.
Okay. Later.
Isn't it strange how it happens so slowly? Isn't it strange how it happens so fast? Doesn't it seem like you're living in a movie up until the moment, but it never lasts? Holding my breath, I can breathe underwater. Closing my eyes, I can see.
No one would follow Helter. No one.